Hello everyone, and welcome to this video from the Jack's Greek Summer School. I'm John Dand, and I'm one of the tutors at the summer school. And today I'm going to talk to you about adjectives in os, on. Now, these are also known in some textbooks as first and second declension adjectives or 2-1-2 adjectives. That's just all different ways of describing the same thing. Okay. Before we look in detail at these adjectives in os, on, let's consider about adjectives in general. So, what are adjectives? Well, as you may well know, adjectives are words that are used to describe nouns. And I'm going to give you 3 examples of phrases that contain adjectives so you can see what I mean by that. The happy horse, the sad soldiers, the brave women. Now, in each of those phrases, the adjectives are highlighted in red. Happy, which describes the horse, sad, which describes the soldiers, and brave, which describes the women. Hopefully fairly straightforward. There are, however, very often harder examples. For example, the running horse, the more cowardly soldiers, and the captured city. You can see this in each of these cases. The words in red are still describing the nouns in their phrase, but translating these into Greek or indeed any other language would be more difficult than the ones we looked at on the previous slide. Good news, today we're just going to focus on the simple examples. Okay, so first of all, vocabulary. What are some adjectives in os, on? Well, here are 4 examples. Sophos, sopher, sophon, wise. Agathos, agather, agathon, good. Kalos, kaler, kalon, fine or beautiful. And kakos, kaker, kakon, bad or evil. We'll talk in a minute about what the on bit means, but for now, let's see how these things work by considering some example sentences. I'm going to put the 4 sentences up, and then I'd like to invite you to pause the video and to have a think about what they mean. So, first example sentence, hokalos hypos treke. He sofer kore lege. Kadendra esti kaka. Hoi xenoi hoi agathoi akuusin. So, pause for a moment, work out what you think they mean, and then resume so I can take you through them. Okay, we're back. This is what they mean. Sentence 1. Hokalos hypos treke. I've translated this as the fine horse is running, but you might have put the beautiful horse is running or beautiful horse runs. That would all be okay. The important thing is that you see that the word kalos, fine and beautiful, describes the horse, hypos. Second sentence. The wise girl is speaking, or the wise girl speaks or talks. Again, the adjective sofer describes the noun kore. Kadendra esti kaka. This sentence is a bit different from the ones we've looked at so far because it has the word esti, is in it. So this is telling us something about the trees. And we see that according to the sentence, the trees are evil. Perhaps this is what motivates someone to chop down a Brazilian rainforest. Who knows? But anyway, if you think that the trees are evil, this is how you say it in Greek. One interesting thing about this sentence is that it has the word esti, meaning is, even though in English we would say are. And that's because of the very strange rule in Greek where a neuter plural noun will take a singular verb, even though obviously in English we use a plural verb. Okay, finally, and this one is much harder than the others, hoi xenoi, hoi agathoi, akuusin. What this means is the good strangers are listening. And the way this works, and this is a very common feature of Greek grammar, by the way, is that you notice there's 2 hois in the sentence. The first one, hoi xenoi, the strangers, and then there's a repeated hoi. And literally what this means is the strangers, the good ones, are listening. So when we have these repeated articles, what that means is that you're getting more information about the noun. What kind of strangers are there? They're good ones. So we could translate this really clunkily into English as the strangers, the good ones, are listening, but that doesn't sound very good. So I'm not going to recommend that. Instead, we can rephrase it to the good strangers are listening. So, looking at the sentences all together, you'll notice one interesting thing about these adjectives is that they didn't always have the same ending. Kalos ended in os, but sofer ended in er, kaka ended in a, and agathoi ended in oi. The rules that describe this change are known as adjective agreement. Before I go on to explain how that works, let's consider what forms can these words take in general. So I'm going to bring up a table. The first thing you'll notice about this table is that we're actually going to look at some different words. And we're going to look at some nouns. So you remember the Greek word for word, which is logos. So to have a quick recap, these are the other forms of the word logos. Logon in the accusative, logu in the genitive, logoi in the dative, logoi in the nominative plural, logus in the accusative plural, logon in the genitive plural, and logos in the dative plural. Those are the 8 forms you get with the word logos. Those of you who are really paying attention will notice I've left out the vocative because I want to keep things neat and simple. With honor, it starts off by going timer and continues as follows. Timer, timers, timei, timai, timas, timon, timas. And this is the other very common pattern that you've probably studied in Greek so far. You remember that we call words like logos second declension, and we call words like timer first declension, or group 1. Finally, I've given you a column for the word for gift, which is doron, and doron goes doron, doru, doroi, dora, dora, doron, dorois. Notice that the table for doron is pretty similar to the table for logos, only the nominative and accusative are ever different. And because they're similar enough, we also classify doron as a second declension noun. So we've got group 2, group 1, and group 2 over here. There's one other respect in which word and honor and gift differ from each other, and that is in gender. Gender, remember, is something that all Greek nouns have. Word is masculine, honor is feminine, and gift is neutral. Okay, if we look at a word like wise, we see the really impressive thing about adjectives is that they can take any gender they want. They can be masculine, or they can be feminine, or they can be neutral, all in the same word, which is pretty cool. And this is what the table for sophos looks like. Sophos, sophon, sophu, sophoi, sophoi, sophus, sophon, sophos. Sopher, sophen, sophers, sophei, sophai, sophas, sophon, sophais. In the neuter, sophon, sophon, sophu, sophoi, sopha, sopha, sophon, sophos. If you think back to the table of nouns we just had, these endings are exactly the same as what we had for logos, timer, and doron. But rather than needing 3 words to cover all 3 genders, 1 word is all we need. How cool is that? The other writers we've met go exactly the same way. So kalos, fine, looks like this. And kakos, evil, looks like this. And any other noun that's listed in the dictionary as os, on, will go exactly the same way. So you now know how to do all of them, which is useful. Okay, now that we know what the words look like, how do we apply the rule of adjective agreement? Well, what the rule is as follows. We say that adjectives must agree with the noun they describe in gender, in number, and in case. And the 3 genders, 2 numbers, single and plural, and the 4 cases multiplied together give us the 24 options we had in the previous table. Now, what agree with means is that if the noun is in, say, the feminine, accusative, plural, the adjective must also be feminine, accusative, plural. It's in the same category in all 3 options, and so it agrees with the noun. We look at some examples, that should become clear. Hoi kaloi hippoi, the beautiful horses. Hippoi is nominative plural. The word hippos is masculine, and so kaloi has to be nominative plural masculine, kaloi. Cars, sophas, koras. Koros here is accusative plural. The word kore is feminine, and so sophos needs to be in the feminine accusative plural form, which is sophos. Corn, kakon, dendron, of the evil trees. Dendron here is genitive plural. Trees are neuter in Greek, and so kakos has to become genitive plural neuter as well, which is kakon. And finally, tois agathois xenois, to the good strangers in the dative. Xenos is dative plural, that's what it looks like. Xenos is masculine, and so agathos has to go into the masculine dative plural, which is agathos. So far, pretty easy. You might think almost embarrassingly easy, because you notice this in all of these examples, the adjective simply has exactly the same ending as the noun. Hard to go wrong with that, isn't it? However, as often with Greek grammar, kindunos, danger. And in fact, the level of danger here is so high that I'm going to put kindunos in red. It's not always that easy. For example, kaloi nautai, the beautiful sails. Nauters, you might remember, is a slightly strange noun. It's group 1, so it goes basically like timer, but it is masculine, whereas most group 1 nouns are feminine. So that means that the nominative plural of nauters is nautai, because that's just what it goes like. But it's still a masculine noun, and so kalos has to stick in the masculine form. It mustn't go to the feminine form. And so the nominative plural masculine of kalos is kaloi. So it's hoi kaloi nautai. Conversely, tas sophas biblus. Biblos, which means a book, is feminine. Because it ends in os, it's group 2 like logos, and so the accusative plural is biblus. But we can't say tous sophus biblus because that's then the wrong gender. So sophas has to be feminine because the book is feminine. So tas sophas biblus is the correct form, even though the endings no longer rhyme. Tes, kakes, nersu is a similar example. Nersos, island, is feminine. This is genitive, and so we need to find the genitive feminine singular form of kakos, which if we consult the table, we would see as kakes. Notice that this ending doesn't really look anything like the ending on nersu, but they do agree with each other because they're both feminine, genitive singular, and the phrase means of the evil island. The smell of the evil island took several weeks to leave my Wellington boots. Would be a possible example sentence where we could use this Greek phrase. Finally, tois agathois neaniais, to the good young men. Neaneas is like nauters, it's a group 1 masculine noun. This is dative plural, and so ends in ice, but the masculine dative plural of agathos is agathos. So again, the endings don't quite rhyme. Okay, so do watch out for that. I have 2 more points for you. We've been talking so far about adjectives in os, er, on, but there are some adjectives in os, are, on. These are very similar to what we've met, but let's look at them in detail. Here's some examples. Philios, friendly. Anthreos, Andrea, Andreon, brave. Ekthros, ekthra, ekthron, hostile. And neos, near, neon, young or new. What's going on with these is exactly the same thing that happens with certain group 1 or first declension nouns like kora, land, and Sophia, wisdom. The rule is that if the stem of the noun or adjective ends in epsilon, iota, or rho, you will usually get an R sound after it rather than an air sound. So rather than saying phili air for the feminine, you say phili R. The good news is this only affects the change in the feminine singular. All the other forms remain exactly the same as what we've met so far. To make that clear, here's a table. Notice that all the endings in the red are exactly the same as what we had with sophos. The only ones that are all different are the feminine singulars, which go philiar, philian, philias, philiai. Everything else is the same. I'd like to end by talking to you about one advanced point, which is very common in Greek. So you'll meet it pretty soon. And that's when we have a phrase that looks like this. Hoi kakoi. Now we've got the word hoi, which means the, and the word kakoi, which means evil, but we don't have any noun that goes with it. So the question is, the evil what? Well, here we need to use our intelligence a bit and make a deduction from what we do know. Hoi is masculine, nominative plural, and so is kakoi. So whatever it is that is evil, it's something that's masculine plural. We could translate the phrase, therefore, as the evil masculine plural things. Now, we tend not to say that in English, but we do have a word for masculine plural things, which is men, or more generally, people. So hoi kakoi is the way you say in Greek, evil people in general. If you change it to hai kakai rather, you've made it feminine. And so hai kakai means evil women. If you make it neuter, takaka, it can't refer to a person anymore because people are either always masculine or feminine in Greek. And so takaka means evil things. So watch out for that. If you have an article with an adjective but no noun, it often helps if you add in the word people or things, depending on what gender you're dealing with. I'm going to give you a sentence that illustrates this point. Tous neus takaka dia fere. Takaka, evil things corrupt the young. So be careful out there. That's all I've got time for today, but I'm going to end by leaving you with another little aphorism or saying, which I hope you find a bit cheery. And that's the following. Tui sophoi han sumforon. To the wise person, everything is of interest. Thank you for watching. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more and learn more about ancient Greek, plus see lots of videos of ancient Greek in action, I advise you to go to www.greeksummerschool.org. Thank you again.